A ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
I didn't actually know that my ghost story was a ghost story until I saw another creator stitch this. And it turns out we have seen the same ghost. So that was weird. I'm going to tag her below because it's not letting me stitch the video, but she went to Rose Hill Cemetery in Chicago, and there was this guy outside that was like very 80s, smelled like cigarettes and stuff. And then she showed a picture of him. And as she was like talking about him, I was like, oh, that kind of sounds like the dude that was there when we were there. Now, I need to preface this with my aunt had died, I want to say like June, July, but for some reason they decided to hold the funeral in Chicago in January. For those of you who haven't been to Chicago in January, the weather is, similar to the Arctic fucking tundra. It is awful, awful weather. And this guy was out there in his cop uniform, but like nothing else on. He had the long sleeve shirt, which like my cousins and I thought was kind of weird, but that was it. And like the pants, and he was wearing his normal like shiny shoes too, which was also kind of weird because it was sort of slushy outside. Like it hadn't really been raining or snowing, but it was kind of wet. It was damp. Like everyone else was wearing kind of protective shoes. Even though we were there for a funeral, we were still wearing like boots or something that would be protecting us from the cold. And so we thought it was kind of weird that this dude was out there. Like, he had a few cigarettes too while he was out there. Like, one of my uncles actually even asked him for a cigarette, and he gave him one, which is another reason I didn't think he was a ghost. Like, until I saw the stitch that I'm going to try to tag below, I thought that was an actual human freaking being. I didn't think that we were. Now, granted, I should preface with the fact that, like, rarely am I able to tell the difference between ghosts and people. It is very rare, and they have to be dressed, like, way out of the era, which, I mean, he was dressed, like, kind of 80s, but sometimes, like, the cops, they do that, that like, Magnum PI sort of look or whatever. And so we left. He was there with his old car too, which we also thought was kind of odd because we were like, why does he have such an old car or whatever? Like maybe because all he does is like go around here. And we were around the side that has the big white wall in front. So I probably should have started with that, but when we got there, there was nobody else there. We had all gone in, and they had a motorcycle cop that was like directing the funeral procession. And then after a while, like one of my uncles goes outside the cemetery walls to go have a cigarette because he didn't think it was respectful, which I agree with. And that's when we saw the cop. He wasn't there to begin with. The other cop that was there that had like helped get the procession in, he was his motorcycle was there, but he wasn't there. But this guy's cruiser was there, and he was there, and he was like shooting the shit, and he was talking with my grandpa. He had a cigarette with one of my uncles. Like, I remember keeping my distance from him just because, like, he's of a particular demographic that terrifies me, and I was just getting really gnarly vibes off of him, and so I stayed away as much as possible. But I had no idea the guy was dead. I had no idea he was a ghost until I saw the stitch that I'm gonna try to tag below. I was like, oh shit, that was a dead guy the whole time. I was planning on stitching this with other stories because I grew up in a house where not one, but two serial killers had hid bodies before the neighborhood was ever built, and they used to protect me from getting abused. So that was the story I was planning on telling with this stitch, and maybe I will on another one. But then I saw that one, I was like, wait a minute, we have the same ghost, and I didn't know that was a ghost. I thought that was an actual, like, human being. Like, you could touch him. People did touch him. Like, he was an actual solid corporeal entity. He didn't. The only thing that we thought was weird was like he wasn't dressed for January Chicago weather because it was brutal. And like I said, he was just wearing his long pants and his long sleeve shirt. I mean, he might have had something on underneath, but like for Chicago in winter, that ain't shit. That really ain't shit. Chicago winter weather is